Hello and welcome to practice. The name of today's class is Deepen the Crease. We're going to pay attention to a lot of hip movement today. And you'll be especially interested in this if you deal with some low back pain or pain in the hips or even anywhere else in the body, because the hip is the biggest joint. And so if it's not working at its best, it's going to impact things around it. So we'll get started here. I'm Brenton. I'm joined today by Ollie. I'll lead us through my version of the practice. You'll see him venture off and do his version, and hopefully you feel very secure at home to do your version as well and make choices that are right for you throughout our practice. So let's go ahead and get started. We can go do that on our backs. Go ahead, come on down here, get nice and comfy. Go ahead and pick your head up and scooch it back away from your chest so that the back of your head gets very long. And then take the hands onto the front ribs, the bottom of the front ribs, and gently press them down. And then widen your chest and let your arms release and relax to the floor, your upper arms. Now see here if you can stretch your right leg straight out in front of you. And notice if your pelvis started to tip there. Sometimes it'll start to tip if you have some limitation in that tissue. So go ahead and slide that right foot back in by the pelvis and then stretch it out again. And start monitoring that side of the pelvis. We want it to stay put here. We want to see if we can find a neutral pelvis and let the legs work around it. So then you can switch your sides with the right foot in. You want to feel maybe even taking your hands to the front of the hips, seeing that where the frontal hip bones are, they sort of magnetize toward each other, and then stretching your left leg out and in. So see if you feel any snap, crackles, or pops in the joint. That's okay as long as it's not painful. But it does tend to indicate where we could maybe be a little bit more centered in our joints. So try to not over effort in any one place, but really use your muscles to make the magic happen. Go ahead and step that left foot in, and then feet on the ground wherever is comfortable for your ankles and your knees, arms down by your side, and then press down with your feet, lift your hips up off the yoga mat a couple of inches. So deep, slow breathing in and out through the nose here and feeling like the butt is doing a lot of the work. So really gripping that tissue around the butt. And then we can start lifting and lowering the pelvis away from the floor and starting to feel the hips articulate right at the crease. So with your mind's eye, go to your hip crease, that's the underwear crease, and start to feel the pelvis lift and lower evenly between the right and left side. And really try to move right at the hip crease and keep the low back pretty stable. So you'll start to see here which one you tend to bias more. Do you typically move more in your low back vertebra and move kind of ignore the hips? Or do you move more in the hips and you can leave your low back alone? So let's hold the pelvis up if you can manage that. And then we'll heel toe the right foot more in the center. Take the hands onto the front of the pelvis and push down with the right foot. Try to keep your pelvis neutral and maybe lift the left knee up. This is really intense. So maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but really push through that right foot and really feel the work of the hips. Take the left foot down. It stays centered. Now hands on the pelvis, you can feel anything that might change or shift under you. Try to prevent that from happening as you lift the right knee up. So moving right in that hip crease. Deep, slow breathing. You're good. Good job. Take that right foot down to the floor, release and relax the hips. You did it. Go ahead, lift your head up, scooch it back again in case that you lost a little bit of length there. We really want length along the whole back line. And then from here, Arms down by the side. Actually, arms, hands clasp around the lower ribs. Push your lower ribs down. And at the same time, open your chest. And then let's lift the knees up over the hips. Here, we're gonna keep the big toes together, but widen the knees away from each other any amount, and then close the knees back in. Let's do this a couple of times, really keeping the torso grounded to the floor. Back of the neck nice and long, and if you feel like the back of the neck is not long, get it up on a pillow. Now, can you move a little bit more? Can you take a little bit more if you can? When your knees come together the next time, begin to stretch the legs away from the torso any amount right from the hip crease, so you're not moving the back or the belly. And then you'll bring the knees back up over the pelvis, widen the knees away from each other. So bring the knees together if you can, stretch the legs out away from the pelvis any amount. Knees bring back over the pelvis, open them up. Let's do that a couple more times. Knees in. Legs push away, not so much though that you feel anything in your back. And so it could just be micro movements. Might not even be visible. Be content with that. Because the first step is just your brain getting used to the task and figuring out who its team is to get the job done. And when it's figuring out how to do that, there's not visible things happening in your muscles. Alrighty, so go ahead, release and relax that down to the floor. You can move around in any way that feels good to you down here. Let's do one more set of abs with your feet on the ground. Interlock the hands behind the head with the elbows wrapped in. Really pull your belly down as you lift up off the shoulder blades. Head soft into the hands. Grip the floor with your feet, really let your neck go, and then see if you can push with your right foot and lift your left knee up over the hip. And if you can do that, can you swivel in the socket there? So try to keep your pelvis still and your right leg still and your head soft. As you feel ready, left foot down, lift up off the shoulder blades, head nice and soft into the hands, really get into the abs, and then come all the way down. Keep breathing here. Nice soft face. Curl down in your belly as you lift up off the head. And then grip with the left foot, lift the right knee up over the hip. Move just the leg in the socket, keeping the pelvis and the left leg nice and still. Good job. You're going. Take the right foot down, then lift up off the shoulder blades a little bit more and let it go. Good job. Okay, so any way you like, let's go ahead. Come on up to a seat. When you come up to a seat, take your legs nice and wide and see if you can kind of shimmy out through the knees there. See how your low back feels here. If you feel like you're being tugged back behind you, your back is gonna like leaning back a little bit more and trying to lift the knees like this. But just seeing if we can get a little bit of hydration in that hip socket, kind of shake them out here a little bit, and then even windshield wiper a little bit left and right, really waking up the legs in that socket. Okay, my friend, it's dolphin time. So let's go ahead, roll over, and get our forearms down on the ground. You can have your hands separated or clasped together, your choice. And then really gripping with the arms, lift off the knees and let the head and neck go. So maybe pedal out through the feet here a little bit and see if you can really start to feel that hip crease. So you really articulate the hip crease all the way around 360 degrees as you push and you turn on through the chest. Does it feel okay to lift one foot up off the ground and swivel that knee in the socket? The hip in the socket, really. The knee will swivel through space. And the other side. When you do that, don't let either side of your side body shorten. So keep them the same length. Let's take the knees down to the floor and come up to the hands, grip at the fingertips. You can always pause and do some wrist stretches if that feels better to you. And we'll make our way into downward facing dog. Articulate the hip crease really well, maybe even by bending the knees and really getting space for the low back. And do all of that without collapsing in your armpits. You want to feel like your armpits are trying to lift up over your wrists and use your muscles to make that happen. And now keep space in your arms as you push off the hands one at a time to walk back to your feet. And your knees are deeply bent and the hips are deeply creased. So this is hip flexion when the belly and the thigh come close together. So try to make that happen way back in the hip crease. And then find space through each of your ribs as you tumble over the legs. Bend the knees, scoop the tailbone, slowly roll your way all the way up to stand. And when you do that, hands on the front of the hips, you can kind of walk the knees out a little bit left and right. When you know how to really work the hip crease well, you're actually able to extend the hips, flatten the hip crease well as well. So see if you can find a neutral pelvis up here where the hip crease is relatively flat, but you're not doing that by jamming the knees in any direction. So your muscles are strong around your knees, up your legs, into your butt and into your hips. And now reach the arms wide and high and take them back down. And do this a few times, taking the opportunity to stretch through the upper body and breathe really low in the torso. Okay, hands down, we're gonna march forward. And to do this, you wanna feel your sitting bones. These are the bones at the bottom of your pelvis. We don't want the right sitting bone to go off to the right here. We wanna stay right up over the right ankle as we lift the left knee in front any amount. So really use the right buttock to hold it there. And now march forward. Get your left sitting bone right up over the ankle. Move at the hip crease to draw the right leg up. So you're not moving in the spine. Step the right foot down. Sitting bone over the heel. Get the spine out of the equation. Deepen the hip crease. Step down and up. If you feel pinching in here, be open to the possibility you haven't found neutral pelvis yet. Go ahead, take that down. Let's settle the feet wherever is comfortable for you with the knees pointing straight ahead. And then sit back, chair pose. So take your hands maybe right into that hip crease and really get in there so you can feel like this is where the movement is happening. And now go up and down in the knees and in the hips where you feel the low back is not moving so much. Okay, we're gonna see if we can intensify this. So the arms down by the side, press down through the feet, stand all the way up and straighten the hips. So extend the hips. Then we flex the hips, sit down, chair pose, and push into the feet, come all the way up. We're gonna see if we can do that a few times, working the hips evenly and really trying to deepen that crease. Really drive with the butt muscles. That's why we turn them on with bridge pose at the beginning of our practice, because we want to use them and we want them to be very available to us. Okay, so press down this next one, reach the arms all the way up to the sky, and now hinge forward at the hips, deepen that crease as you come down over the legs. Release through the head and neck. Step the feet back one at a time, knees down to the floor. Your choice if the toes are tucked or untucked. Come on up over your knees. So press down with the knees and try to flatten the hip crease on the front. And you can even take your hands there and try to feel, is your pelvis centered between your legs? We want a nice centered pelvis. Now we're gonna feel the muscles on the front of the hips. There's actually one of the quadricep muscles covers the front of the hip all the way down into the knee. So we wanna feel that bad boy turn on as we start to lean back at the knee joint, keeping the hips in that same relationship, and then come back up. And it might just be a couple of inches, maybe not even that. Coming back and back up. And we wanna see if we can really get this right into those meaty quadriceps on the front. They really like being trained like this. And maybe just one more time. Okay, now deepen the hip crease as you send the hips back, hands forward, and now we're in tabletop position. So feel the chest and the shoulders, get your head lifted in line with your spine, and then step the right foot back and the left foot back for plank. So breathe here, soften your jaw, really grip through the fingers. Tap the knees down to the floor, and then bend the elbows, slowly coming all the way to the belly. Release and relax down here, forehead down. Maybe just kind of wagging out through the hips if that feels good. Here's our opportunity to extend our hips and flatten the hip crease. So hug your thighs into their sockets one at a time. And then grip your butt so that you flatten the hip crease on the front of the body. Pull your low ribs up. And now, keeping the butt this active, lift your right foot and knee up off the ground any amount. So you're using your calf, your quad, or your hamstring, and your butt. And then same thing on the other side. But your goal is to keep your hip crease really pulled out like taffy on the front. That happens by frontal hip bones lifting into the body. And move through the legs, kind of intuitively. Maybe you swim them out left and right. Maybe you just work one at a time. Whatever's going to get your brain to map that area. And if you can feel it this subtly, when you lift your leg, feel the head of your thigh bone where it plugs into the pelvis. Get that to lift too, rather than dipping forward to the floor. Okay, so release and relax that. Feel your legs. They feel like a little spaghetti there. Slide the hands back underneath the elbows and roll the shoulders away from the ground. Maybe roll the shoulders a few times to wake them up, remind them that they're part of the show. And then gripping at the hands, use your arms to push up to the knees. Tuck the toes, lift the knees, and hinge at the hips to send the pelvis high to the sky, downward facing dog. Keep your hips really creasy as you push off the hands and walk all the way back, bending into the knees, sitting the pelvis way back in space. Grounding down through the tail, curling ourselves all the way up to stand. And in your very own time, reach the arms up and down. Keep the right sit bone up over the right heel as you lift the left knee in front of the body and then step it down. Lift the right knee up in front of the body and then step it down. This time, as you lift it up, swivel it in the socket any amount, and don't go too far. You know you've gone too far when your pelvis starts moving with you. You'd rather do less so that your brain can be more precise with what's going on. Take that down, stand on the left leg, left sitting bone over the ankle, pulling the ribs in, swivel, swivel. Okay, right foot down, and then stepping the left foot back, so we're in high lunge. So getting into a place that's manageable. Squeeze the legs up into the pelvis and get the pelvis upright so it thinks that you're just in a standing position. So you're flexing the right hip, extending the left hip. They're both working into the hips. Take the hands here so you can feel what's going on. We want to keep the pelvis centered with the legs and the armpits. As we lift, we turn open to the side, and we side lunge over to the left, keeping the hip bones equally distant from the armpits when you do that. Lift ourselves back up, turn towards the front, hands on the hips so you can feel what's going on in there. Back to our high lunge. Let's do that one more time. Lift up, turn open, deepen the hip crease as you come back, and come up, turn towards the front, high lunge. Let's press down with the right foot, lift the left knee up, and when you do it, pull it over to the right so it's internally rotated here, and then step it down. Pull the right knee up, but it's internally rotated, so it's pointing diagonally to the left, down, pull up, internal, and we're moving at the hip, so we're not trying to swivel the pelvis, we're just trying to swivel the lifting hip. The standing hip is still sitting bone over the heel. Now, after this next one, step the right foot back, so we're in a high lunge here, so hands on the hips. Pelvis upright. You're flexing in the front hip, extending the back, and they're all plugging in and up. Get yourself lifted through the torso. Stay organized as you lift up and turn open to the side. Side lunge over to the right. Stay organized as you lift up. Come towards the front for high lunge. One more time, we're going to stay organized. Work both legs evenly the whole time. They both got a job to do the whole time. Coming to the front, here we are, high lunge. Press down with the left foot. Lift the right leg up. This time it goes out, external, down. Left leg, external, down. So it's pulling out to the side. And don't go too far, right? You know you've gone too far when your pelvis starts to swivel with it. Okay, right foot here. Step the left foot back. You're back in your high lunge. This time, let's stretch the arms. So maybe find cactus arms here and get your torso compact. So your hips can do a lot of work to really hold your pelvis in place. And then you can start to move in the torso a little bit, any amount, in any direction. Just getting a little bit of twisting in, that can feel really nice. Okay, over to the front, hands onto the hips here. We're hinging forward at the right hip, so get really into that right buttock. And now reach forward towards the floor or to an ottoman, to a fireplace, whatever you can grab onto. And now see if you can unweight your back foot, lift it off the ground any amount for standing splits. But you gotta use your standing leg to try to get your pelvis really well set between your legs and your armpits. And now we're gonna see if we can bend the left knee into the belly, curl the belly in, stand up on the right leg all the way up. Whew, so the right leg is really turned on now. Take a break if you need, but get the sit bone right up over the hip or right up over the heel. Keeping a sense of this, we're gonna hinge forward at the right hip, over the right leg. See if you can stretch the left leg out any amount for warrior 3-ish. Bend at the right knee or left knee and hip. Hinge up over the right leg. Right sitting bone right up over the right heel. Can you do this one more time? Sitting back into the right glute. Pressing out through the left foot. And left knee in. All the way up. You are doing it. We're doing it. We're good. Left foot down to the ground. Okay.
Go ahead and reach the arms all the way up to the sky. And then hands down. Right foot can step back, so we're in high lunge on the left, and then feeling ourselves pulled in at the torso. Taking the arms to cactus, and then feeling here a little bit of a turn so you feel really nice and plugged in at the torso. From here, hands to the hips, hinging forward over that front hip, and then taking the hands down to the ground. If it feels okay, and you don't need to be on the floor, you can lift up for a standing split. And your legs can be so bent here, because the point is to feel the left leg underneath you, really position and maneuver the pelvis so that it's evenly set. Can you stand up over the left leg? Maybe. And from here, can you hinge forward over the left leg, keeping the sitting bone up over the left heel, maybe stretching the right leg behind us. And you take any amount of time here. You can always break out of the pose sooner, bringing the right leg in, hinging upright, and feeling the sitting bone up over the heel, sitting back into the left glute. And coming all the way up, this time all the way to stand. Taking a nice deep breath, congratulating yourself, maybe even shaking it out. You can walk around a little bit even if that feels good. Good job. Okay, let's go ahead, come on down to our backs here, my friend. So let's take a few little stretches here. Maybe even starting with a little Badakanasana, soles of the feet together with the knees falling open from each other, but making sure that the pelvis is really well set so that the low back feels like it's in a good position. And if this doesn't feel good, you can always close your knees in on each other. So if you like what we did today, make sure you are signed up for our weekly letter. You can do that on our website, and that is free. We send out new classes to your inbox every Sunday. If you want to use your hands to guide your legs together, and then bring the knees into the chest. Perhaps rolling around a bit, massaging out different parts of your back. And we do all of this on a donation basis. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful donors who've donated on our website and through our Patreon. You really help make this content available to everyone who needs it. Thank you. Holly's applauding. All right, let's go ahead and set ourselves up for a rest. Savasana. You can lay your legs out and your arms out if that's comfortable for you. And if it's not comfortable for you, pick a laying posture that is. If you feel pent up in your breath at all, feel free to take an exhale out through the mouth. You are welcome to breathe out through the mouth as long as you need to feel a sense of calmness in your belly. And if you can get to a place where you feel calmness in your belly, perhaps close your lips and breathe easily in and out through your nose.
take a deeper breath, and you're welcome to start moving around a bit in your body. You're welcome to roll over to one side and then press your way on up to a comfortable seat if that is where you'd like to end your practice. And wherever you're ending your practice, we'll have another moment to be quiet together. Great job today, my friend. I hope you find that as your hips start to move well and your brain starts to map them and get a little bit more precise about what joint does what to produce a given movement, that everything will start to feel better. And it'll be like puzzle pieces starting to click into place for you. So that is my true hope, that this practice has given you another puzzle piece adding into the mix that will be invaluable to you moving forward in everything you do. So thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day.